Dòng towards it.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We've got people online. I've only got one of my iPads on.
No, that's
That's fine.
When I didn't see it, I only used the microphone to tell it. I think that's
Sorry about this, we're nearly there.
turn up the volume.
Okay, I'll ask again. Everyone online hear me? If you can hear me, put your hand up, yep, oh, whatever, good. Okay, well, thank you for attending the planning meeting on the 2nd of August 2021. Item 1 on the agenda is the evacuation procedure for obviously the people that are here. There is a location plan at the exits and the assembly point situated on the doors of the room. Please familiarise yourselves with it. On discovering a fire, please carry out the following: sound the alarm, attack fire if possible and safe to do so using the appliance provided. On hearing the evacuation signal, please carry out the following: exit the building by your nearest safest exit. All visitors report to assembly point G. All staff to report to their designated assembly point on Woolpack Way car park. Do not leave the assembly point for any reason until told to do so by the incident controller or the fire brigade officer. Okay, item 2, apologies for absence, members away on official council business.
Yes. Why is there an echo? Loud. Okay, yeah, I'll try that. Councillor Jarvis isn't here, and he's going to, his substitute is Councillor D. Clues, Councillor Simpson, and his substitute is Councillor Simmons.
Can we all accept these apologies? Seconded. No. Okay. Noted. That is correct. Okay, we'll move on to item 3 then. Disposable pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest.
Chair, I'll be declaring a pecuniary, non-pecuniary interest in the planning application for Addison Town Council's Old Washington.
And unfortunately, I need to declare an interest as I'm also a town councillor. I'm proposing that because obviously I'm going to have to leave the room to have Councillor Simmons in the chair because obviously I'm the chair. So obviously we need a chair.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay. All right. So do we need a vote on that? To put Councillor Simmons.
Yes.
Can we have a vote on that? All those in favour? Okay. Thank you. Item 4, minutes of the board held on the 14th of July 2021.
Move, Chair.
Any seconder? Councillor Hancock. All those in favour? So this one must be signed. Just on the back sheet.
Yes.
Item 5, Budgetary Control Report 2021, period ending the 30th of June 2021.
Is there any?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm quite happy to answer any questions, although I can also refer to the Assistant Director of Resources if necessary as well. The main message from the report is that planning fees are slightly down. This is because even though we're getting a large number of planning applications, they are smaller applications and they carry a less of a fee, and that's the reason why the gross net cost of applications are higher than they would be profiled.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Okay, moving on to the planning applications.
I'm going to vote on that.
Oh,
Is that for noting or?
That's a noting.
For noting, okay, thank you.
Okay, then we'll start with PAP 2021-00302 and PAP 2021-00303 and 0052. Land south of Dairy House Farm, Spon Lane, Rendon.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just go through the?
Yes. So,
You're busy.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, right, okay, thank you. There are three applications here, Mr. Chairman. They all run from the first one, which is the variation of the condition. Basically, the proposal in that application is to increase the number of houses on the estate by 9, and the subsequent 2 applications are consequential to that particular proposal. If I can just run through the one slide, as I have on this one. Just to show you where we are. The houses that are affected by this variation all face the Watling Street that's the boundary of this particular site. So on this side, on the left-hand side of the plan that you have in front of you, these are the houses that front Watling Street, and therefore you have the rear elevations along here, shown here. This was the approved scheme, as you can see here, and the amended scheme or proposed scheme is on this side. There are more houses in this particular purple area and in this particular purple area to the south. The consequence of the variation is that there will be an additional 3 houses in the line from here to here. That's now being proposed. The other 6 will be accommodated behind that frontage. The separation distances are shown on the plan as well. You can see that the approved separation distances from the house fronts of the elevations to the rear of the elevations on the Watling Street are 44, 37, 37, 35, 35, 47 and 60. On the proposals, on the same distances are 47, 38, 40, 42, 36, 35, 46 and 50. These are very much the same in this part of the development. These are slightly reduced. As you can see from the report, Mr. Chairman, we have had representations from people in Watling Street, basically subjecting to the increase in development close to their properties, additional overlooking, additional traffic coming and going in front of their houses as a result of the 3 houses, and also objections relating to disturbance during construction work. Our view, Mr. Chairman, is that those separation distances are not materially altered. Even down here, they are reduced, but not by a significant degree, and all of those separation distances are well within the guidance that this council operates. So therefore, Mr. Chairman, in terms of the actual main proposal to increase the number of units, the recommendation is that be granted. As a consequence of that, the subsequent two applications to vary conditions would also follow on from that. And you can see from the report, Mr. Chairman, that the Highway Authority's got no objection to the increase, and neither has the Flood Authority to the particular increase in numbers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We have one speaker for this, Tammy Cariolis. Is that how I spell your name? Sorry, is that correct?
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Oh, thank you. You'll be given 3 minutes, and Ms. Ryan will be able to start you off when you're ready.
Yes, when you're ready to speak, I'll set the time of 3 minutes, and I'll say at 2.5 minutes that you've got 30 seconds to go.
Thank you, Annie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Committee, for allowing me to speak in support of this Section 73 variation of condition application. My name is Tammy Cariolis from BM3 Architecture. On behalf of Budgetary Partnerships, we have been appointed to submit this application to make amendments to the current reserve matters approval for 120 homes at Spon Lane, Grendon. The North Warwickshire Borough Council granted reserve matters approval for the site on the 7th of August 2019. This followed the approval of an outline planning application on the 4th of July 2018. This application has been submitted to vary condition 5 of the current reserve matters approval to allow for 9 additional dwellings to be delivered on the site. The addition of 9 dwellings is led by a high demand of 2 and 3 bedroom houses that are more affordable in this current marketplace. And as such, Budgetary wish to accommodate the current demand of housing rather than stick to an outline approved scheme that was designed over 5 years ago, and its marketing information is now significantly outdated. Our proposal to introduce the additional homes is achieved by replacing some of the larger 4-bedroom properties, which are in less demand, with these 2 and 3 bedroom houses. At a time when there is current shortage of housing, these proposals will provide additional dwellings of a type and a size that is currently in demand locally. The proposals show the principles established by the approved reserve matters scheme without creating additional development area. These principles include being in keeping with the approved perimeter block layouts, including following the established building line previously. This maintains the overlooking distances to the existing homes and keeps the natural surveillance of the streets and the footpaths. There is still high quality landscaping and paving provided. The new dwellings remain visually connected to the public open space around the development and the existing rural setting. The design and placement of dwellings at key junctions and road ends play an important part in enhancing the street scenes and providing hierarchy within the streets of the development. Clearly defined boundaries between public and private spaces. There is sufficient parking provided for each new home at 2 spaces each, and there is no impact on the affordable housing provision. Budgetary has had pre-consultation discussions with the Warwickshire County Council planning authorities and the highways teams in conjunction with these proposed redesigns. We have accommodated their responses within the new design to satisfy them of road safety. The additional traffic generated from the additional 9 homes has to be offset from the removal of the larger houses, and that is up to 6 parking spaces.
You'll have to stop there, I'm afraid. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
No
Do
problem.
you have any questions for the speaker? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just ask, you made a statement about there being more demand for the smaller houses. Is that based on inquiries that you've already had for this development?
Yes, I believe so.
Anyone else have anything to say to the speaker? In which case, thank you very much, Tammy.
Thank you.
Attending the meeting. So any discussions on the application?
Chair, I was just wondering, there's another 9, I remember this coming through as an outline planning, and I also remember it as full planning, and there was a big discussion about vehicles and the number of houses. And I noticed here that the highways have no objection, but it all comes off on that one road coming past the existing Dairy House Farm site, which was the Bellway site, and now 9 more houses. That's going to be another 18 vehicles at least, and I'm amazed that highways haven't said anything. But I've got a question for Mr. Brown. Extra houses, does that mean more 106 money becomes available for Grendon based on a house sale?
No, Mr. Chairman, that would not do so. The variation is immaterial in that respect, and it wouldn't meet the thresholds for revisiting the section 106.
So they get away with more. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. All right, that's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Read the report, listened to what's been said. I think with highways not objecting, I don't think we do anything else than go with the recommendation, and I'll move the recommendation to progress us.
Okay, can I have a second for that? All those in favour of the recommendation? Okay, that's passed. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, is that all 3 applications? So there are 3 applications here, not just the one.
Right. So
Ditto.
yes, yeah, all for all 3. Thank you. Next, it's PAP 20210394. That's 6 Bolters Lane, Wood End.
Move the recommendation, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, can I just before we go that far?
Yeah.
I'll have to update the recommendation. Just bear with me. So certain members can see where the site is. The Bolters Lane's here, the Tanks Road down here, it's practically on the junction. There's a row of cottages here, and you can see the red line with the site here. The garage is where the cursor is now. And that gives you a closer indication of where it is, and a description, elevation of the garage. If I just move back to that one, the recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is refusal subject to, and obviously the report indicates that we hadn't got any objections at the time of preparing the report. To update Councillor Phillips, we have now received an objection from the next door neighbour from over here on the cursor on this side. Now, as a result of that, Mr. Chairman, it looks very likely that there's an amended plan will come in, and we need to reconsult on that. Therefore, I'd ask that the recommendation be changed to one of deferral, such we can go through that process, and then it'll come back to you, perhaps with an amended plan.
Happy to do that, Chair. I'm just trying to move
forward. Now a second on the deferral.
It's a question first, Chair.
Yeah.
I understand exactly what Mr. Brown has said.
Yeah.
If we're happy with this in principle, why does it need to come back to the board?
Mr. Brown.
As I said, the recommendation was subject to no objection. We had an objection, and normally what we would do is try to overcome that objection through an amended plan. Now, the applicant has indicated that he's prepared to revisit the proposal, and therefore I'm prepared to saying we should go through that process and reconsult, such that in fact, hopefully, both applicant and objector will be able to agree a scheme. And that seems to be a far favourable outcome for both parties rather than just the one.
Chair, I hear exactly what's been said, but normally a detached double garage doesn't usually trouble the planning committee. There's usually lots of them.
It is somebody that works for this council, so we have to go through this process.
Somebody works for this council.
Yeah. Okay. Okay then. Well,
I'll second whatever we said.
Yeah. Okay. All those in favour of deferment? Okay. Thank you very much. Next item is 19 Gordon Road, erection of 2 single storage dwelling with associated parking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members will be familiar with this, but just to remind you, the site is up here, edged red. And the plan is the 2 bungalows at the back, and we went through quite a lot of the detail on this last time. Obviously, the recommendation doesn't change. What I do have to do, Mr. Chairman, is to update the planning board. I've had a letter and an email from the agent who's spoken to the board on a couple of occasions with respect to this application. And he draws attention, and I'll read it out verbatim, Mr. Chairman, because so that members can hear exactly what he has to say. Should the members still be concerned about the impact on the character of Dordon, the applicant would consider a single bungalow on the site. This will allow number 19 to have a garage in the land at the rear, leaving its back garden the same size as its neighbours. It's understood that if this is the case, it would of course require a new submission. So there's an offer there, Mr. Chairman, to look at an amended plan. Now, I can't comment on that amended plan, but clearly the proposal in that email would have to be looked at afresh, and clearly without being prejudicial to any recommendation that would follow, one bungalow rather than two would be better. Particularly as there's an existing one building on the site already, so it might be considered as a replacement. But I have to point out, Mr. Chairman, that's without the benefit of consultation or a full planning application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Any comments? Councillor Hancock.
This has come now, this is the second time, and the first meeting that we had, the previous meeting, the actual board was actually looking to approve the original plan of the two bungalows. There was a lot of support on, especially our side, to do that, but we needed a reason to support it because obviously the officers were looking at refusal. The character of Dordon was the biggest question, and Councillor Parsons actually mentioned it quite a lot. There's no difference to the character of Dordon in the houses. There is no character to the way the Dordon houses are built. They're all different depending on when they were built. It's expanded and changed throughout the time. They have done everything that they were asked of, actually. I think they've made massive amendments, and even from the email there, they're clearly trying to appease the planning officers and us to get some planning permission. I believe that we should be looking for those reasons to actually support their application and grant planning permission on the first approval of two bungalows.
Councillor Derby.
Thank you. My views don't actually agree with those. If it has been to an appeal, I understand it. It was refused again on appeal for very definite reasons, and I can't see any material differences between the decision on that appeal and what is before us now. So, yeah, I really cannot see how we can support this as it stands here.
One of the major points was that the windows, because the cars going past, would affect privacy. They have changed the windows, as you saw at the site visit, and they have changed the angles, and they've changed it so they're blackout, so no one can see into that house. Number two, again, the character of Dordon, that was the other part. So the two parts that we were complaining about seem to have been done by them. So when this went to appeal the first time, it was rejected because there was no major changes. They have changed it and changed the windows. As I've mentioned before, the character of Dordon, I do not see as a valid excuse to be refusing planning permission on this.
Councillor Bell, sorry.
Can I just ask Mr. Brown some clarification? So the applicant is saying what? Are they saying if we're minded to refuse, they would put forward another application? Or are they saying we now would prefer to have one bungalow? I'm not quite sure what they're actually saying here. Are they withdrawing this application?
I read out verbatim, Councillor Bell, so that I wouldn't colour the situation one way or another. I'll read it out again, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Should the members still be concerned about the impact on the character of Dordon, the applicant would consider a single bungalow on the site. There is no reference to withdrawal. All this said is it is understood that if this is the case, it would of course require a new submission.
Understand. So the application is not withdrawn, it is as it is before us tonight.
What they're saying, Mr. Chairman, if I may come in, is that they would like a further deferral if it looks as if it's going to be a refusal. That's what they're saying. And then they will submit an amended plan for a single house or single bungalow.
Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Chair. For the reasons that Councillor Hancock has just read out, if that's a proposal by him, I'm quite happy to second it, Chair.
Okay. Anyone else would like to speak? No? Okay. Well,
I spoke to the applicant at the end of last week, and they were, and I know we can only look at what's in front of us, but at the same meeting, they were watching on YouTube. We actually passed the same type of development in Kingsbury, where there was a road up the side of the house. And there's also, I'm led to believe, another development going to take place at 68 Gordon, which is going to be a very similar development to this. And what the applicant is really concerned about is consistency. And is very concerned about Mr. Brown would like to speak.
Mr. Brown.
If I just come back on that, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Humphries knows what I'm going to say. Every application should be considered on its own merits. There's a complete difference with this application in that, as Councillor Dervix has said, this exact proposal was dismissed at appeal. That is the starting place for this particular proposal. The inspector has a completely objective view on this application, an objective assessment, and said this application should be, this proposal should be dismissed. And that's the difference between the cases that Councillor Humphries has referred to and this particular one.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Councillor Humphries, yeah.
All I'm trying to say that as far as the applicant is concerned, is consistency. We've allowed something to happen elsewhere, and they feel as though that there is a bit of a vendetta against them. I can't make any comment on that. That's the words used to me. So I would. I don't know how we can keep prolonging it, but I would prefer another deferment while we could sort it out. So I cannot understand how, if one house is okay, maybe okay, it really should we be advising the applicant that one house is no good if it's a problem. Thank you.
Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to be clear on if Councillor Humphries is moving a deferment, I'm happy to second it. But if we're going to vote on rejection, I just want to be clear on the planning reasons that we're voting on. We also quote the planning reasons, and I spent many hours trawling through the planning minutes and things to find planning reasons to be against or for something, and just to say I'm against it is not really for me, but I'm happy to move a deferment.
Okay. Councillor Hancock.
I'd like to propose to grant the original application of 2 bungalows.
Okay.
First proposal.
I would propose that we have a development.
Right.
Okay, well,
I'll just second it. I'll move it, I'll second it.
Councillor Hayfield.
Well, I've heard the proposal for approval and I've heard it being seconded, and I'm quite content with that. I think, as Councillor Hancock has said, they have made significant alterations anyhow, which alleviates some of the issues that have been a concern before. So I think that itself is a valid reason for
Okay, so I've got 2 proposals, one for deferment and one for acceptance. Obviously, acceptance was said first, so we'll take a vote on the acceptance.
Excuse me, can I?
Yeah.
I think you need to be very, very clear of your reasons.
Yes.
Before you take a vote.
Right.
So we need to understand what the reasons are for going against officers.
Okay, so my reasons are for the proposal is that the reason for rejection on character of Dordon, the houses in Dordon, the character of Dordon is very mixed. The same kind of development happened behind the co-op on New Street, and this again is the same basic development. Also, they have made amendments to the concerns that we had, re the windows and the driveway. Therefore, that's the reasons that we would go against I would like to propose against the officer's recommendation.
Yeah, Jeff, have you got any comment to make on that?
The only comment I would have is that the inspector who dealt with inspectors who dealt with this particular site were aware of the character of Dordon all the way through, and it's clear that that's the main reason for the dismissal of the appeal. So therefore, the character has not changed.
Okay. So we'll
have to deal, if we can't agree, then we'll have to deal with the initial recommendation first.
Councillor Hayfield.
Chair, these things come down to a matter of opinion, and I'm hearing a local member say on click, and I'm happy to go there. It is a difference of opinion, and that's what we as elected members are here to do, take a view on that. And that's what we're going to do, for good or for bad, one way or the other, whether we approve it or whether we go for a deferral. But that's what we're going to do as elected members, is take a view on these things. I think Councillor Hancock has expressed perfectly reasonable reasons why we can go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll take a vote on the original recommendation then.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with Councillor Hancock and Councillor Hayfield as well. I mean, I've lived Dorden Polesworth all my life, and I mean, if you have a walk down Dorden Road where this is, you've got a mixture of bungalows, detached houses, semi-detached houses. There's no character. We're not looking at a sort of a road that's uniform and then a sort of an anomaly within that uniformity. This is a road with lots of different types of housing, different sizes of housing, different numbers of bedrooms. We've got some with drives, but some without drives. There isn't. I can't understand how the term character is defined within it.
Okay, then we're going to go for a vote for firstly for acceptance, and then for the deferment. So,
I'll just confirm, so we're voting on the proposal to accept.
accept, yes.
Accept the plan.
Yes. Okay. So all those in favour of accepting the proposed?
Eight.
And all those against? Two.
Did you vote?
No, I didn't. Well, I'm accepting. Okay, that's accepted. So obviously we don't need to take any deferment. Okay, moving on then to PAP 2021-0188. That's 19 Priory Road, Atherstone.
Thank you, John. I'll just move on. This particular proposal was deferred. Decision on this was deferred last meeting, so members could visit the site. That has now taken place. Members were able to look at the rear of this particular property as existing. It's a small dwelling, small outbuilding, as you can see here, which is still there. Flat roof extension here on the left-hand side. And the proposal was to demolish the building, this particular building, and then have an extension at the rear, as you can see here. Part 2-storey, part single-storey, part 2-storey, as you can see here, with the single-storey extension coming out further. The roof lights in the single-storey extension, as you can see. The proposal would be recessed in order to provide rear access to the garden down this side. And also a small recess on this side to accommodate soil pipes and guttering. The main issues, Mr. Chairman, that gave rise to the site visit were to do with the drainage of this particular property, the surface water drainage of this property. The proposal was amended in order that it can be self-contained. In other words, it has its own downpipes here, rather than the rainwater from the guttering around here going into the run of gutters that follow along the line of the rear of the properties here. And also, it was mentioned that a 2-storey extension, as this particular proposal, would be the first of its kind in this area between Priory Road and Tudor Crescent, and therefore it would affect the character and appearance of this particular part of the site, a particular part of the town. I beg your pardon, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Anyone like any comments on this? Okay, then we'll go straight to the vote then. All those in favour of this application?
We need to get, I'll move it.
Sorry?
Oh, you can move in second.
I'll second it.
Oh, sorry.
Moving what?
Recommendation, sorry.
That's exactly clear.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Next one is.
We've got a vote of it.
Oh, sorry, I thought you voted. My apologies. Oh, all those in
You're
favour?
still the apprentice, obviously.
I am. All those in favour? All agreed, thank you. None against? No, it's passed. Okay, moving on to Old Farm Early Common. We've got 3 applications here. Mr. Brown?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just run through the slides first, and then I'll make a couple of comments. First of all, you can see an aerial photograph here on the left-hand side. Hurley Common or Brickyard Lane is down here. The Hurley Village is down here. And as you can see, it's quite a long access track to the farm, which is here. The Severn Trent works, which are referred to, are here, and they share the access down here. And there are residential properties along the front here. In terms of the footpaths, which are referred to in the committee report, T55A comes down the side, which in fact on the aerial photograph it's probably better to show you is down that side, and T55 runs along the track here, as you can see, and they come down here by the side of Green Farm. They don't, as you can see from the plan here, they don't come down the main access. The first proposal that you have of the three is for the Shepherd's Hut. That's located here. The location plan is a slightly different angle than you saw on the aerial photograph, with Hurley Common up here, the residential properties here, and the access coming up through here, the main farm, and as I said, Severn Trent works down here. So the Shepherd's Hut is down here. If I just run through the plan showing that particular hut. Second application is for the Hgb Maintenance Building, and you can see the building is this particular fellow up here on the side of the farm, as you can see there, with the hard standing area behind, and that's the plan. And then the third application is to use this particular building for the mixed uses which are described in the application, and that is that particular building. Before we go any further, Mr. Chairman, you'll see from the report that apart from the three applications, there's also reference to other alleged unauthorised activity at the site. And there's been quite a generation of representations, both from applicants and from objectors' representatives on this particular application. We understand that works have been undertaken to the access to improve that access. And we understand also that the County Council had a representative out there to look at that. But we have not had a consultation response from the County Council in that respect, or indeed updated plans to show what that improved access might be. And that's quite material, Mr. Chairman, because as you can see from the report, the Highways Authority originally objected to the three applications. And that forms quite a material part of the argument that runs through the reports and leads to one of the reasons for refusal for all three cases. That is important. The applicant has also contacted officers to say that there are inaccuracies in the report. Now that they indicate that there are factual inaccuracies in there, as well as inaccuracies in respect to the weight given to different arguments. That's a different matter. But they also say there are inaccuracies in there, factual inaccuracies in there. And we've also had representatives of the objectors saying that in fact there are still alleged unauthorised uses on the site. They continue to cause harms, and that particularly through HGV movements, and that as a consequence of that, the council should also be considering full stop notices and temporary stop notices rather than enforcement notices. In light of all that, Mr. Chairman, it may very well be that you want to consider a deferral on this particular item, such that all these matters can be put back into a further report, and particularly that we reconsult the County Council to get its views on the situation as it's now on the site, rather than what it was when they visited a couple of months ago.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
I just want to, I know you've got speakers on this and everything, and all lined up to speak. But I take what Jeff Brown has just said. I don't think we're in a position to consider this tonight.
I would actually agree with you there.
Just going to propose that.
Yes.
I think we need to take, rather than hear everybody and then decide to defer it. I think it's clear at the moment that it would be wrong for us to actually try and make a decision tonight.
On the information received, I would recommend that we defer this until more information is
I'll
forthcoming.
second that, Chair.
You second that, Councillor Simmons?
Yeah, I was going to say a similar thing, but there's a lot going on there. And I wondered whether or not that it'd be worth having a site visit. There's a lot going on there. There's areas where.
Well, I think we should defer for a site visit then.
Yeah, because there seems to be a lot of talking.
You were after more of a report.
Sorry, Councillor Vincent.
Sorry,
Chair.
Chair, I should have spoken through the Chair.
Yeah.
I thought Councillor Hayfield was looking for more of a report, and then listening to what Mr. Brown said, that we need to put a report, and I think we'd have to have a deferral then to have a look at the site based on those reports, rather than if this is going to change this report now.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so we'll still do a deferment with a site visit on receiving the reports from Mr. Brown. Okay, all those in favour?
You need a proposer and second.
Well, sorry, a proposal.
I thought you were proposing.
I'll propose a site visit and deferment with the reports.
Second, fresh report.
Yeah, fresh report. Councillor Hayfield is second. So, right, all those in favour, you all put your hand up now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So unfortunately, if anyone was due to speak, there's no need now. Thank you. Next item is the Old Mortuary, North Street, Atherstone. As I'm a town councillor and we have another town councillor, also Councillor Clues, I have to leave the room, and now is going to be conducted by Councillor Simmons.
Quick change. Right, so we're moving on to, just out the room, we're moving on to application 6F, the Old Mortuary, North Street, the variation of condition number 2 of Planning Commission 0056 related to the drawings amended to meet inclusive design regulations and building regulations requirement in respect of demolition of the existing building and construction of a new 2-storey office and meeting. I don't think we have any speakers on this one, do we, Mr. Brown?
Not that I'm aware of. Just to run through the plans, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Chairman, sorry, Madam Chairman. I've got to effect the change as well. Location, members should know where this is. North Street, Blackwood Street in Atherstone. It's the old mortuary here at the back of the post office. And that's the floor plan, but that's the elevations which are now being proposed. Members will be aware that the Planning Commission was granted for this 2-storey redevelopment of the site a few months ago. This is an application to vary it, and this variation, the list of variations are actually outlined in the report. The main issue here is its impact, heritage impact on the conservation area and adjoining list of buildings. And you can see that the conservation area, the council's conservation area officer has no issues with this. The application for the variation comes in as a result of requirements that have to be made under building regulations, and they're mainly internal, but they do require space for wheelchair users. The objection that has come in basically repeats to a certain extent the original objection when this first application came in, to say that in fact this building is not big enough for town council purposes, and that they should be looking elsewhere in the town. That argument has already gone through, Madam Chairman, in the sense that Planning Commission was already granted for this particular size building, and therefore this is just a variation of what was originally approved.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Have any questions from you? Councillor Burbick.
Isn't a question, but I would like to speak on this. As Jeff has already said, this has already gained planning permission, and it's too late to go over any of those arguments again. One of the big criticisms that we had of it to begin with was the disabled access and the disabled facilities. And clearly work has been done to address that now. I still don't think that it is appropriate. I still don't think that it has answered all the problems that arise out of that. I'm still very unhappy that the toilet door for the disabled toilet is directly opposite the front door, which would have glass in it. Anybody walking past can see straight through and so on. But I cannot see, unfortunately, that bears any relationship to what we can actually take into account in both here. But I'm still very unhappy about it.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. Councillor Hayfield, then Councillor Bell.
I hear what Councillor Dervitt says, but the ship has sailed.
Agreed.
So in which case I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you.
I was going to move it, so I'll second it.
Thank you. We've got a proposer, Councillor Hayfield, and a second, Councillor Bell. If there aren't any more members that would like to speak on it, then we'll take the vote. All in favour? And against? Abstentions? Thank you. We move on to the next item, and we can ask Councillor Clues and Councillor Clues to come back in the room. Thank you. Oh, let's just let him know.
It's one thing, it's not one
Thank you, Councillor Simmons, for doing that. So we'll move on to the next item is PAP 2018-0050, and that's Fir Tree Paddock, Quarry Lane, Manchester. Mr. Brown.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, just to a couple, I think it's just one plan here. Quarry Lane, this is the track that comes off Quarry Lane. Quarry Lane's up here to the north. It comes off Quarry Lane. As you go up through the village, over the canal, over the railway line, there's a track which is on the left-hand side, which comes all the way down here to Manchester Marina, which is down here. The canal on this particular plan is along here, and the track runs parallel to that. The application is about halfway down that on the left-hand side. The application site is the red area here. There already exists a planning commission granted appeal for a gypsy and traveller pitch on that site. The proposal is to add one additional pitch to that area. The yellow indicated here is the existing pitch. The new one would be up here. They would use the same amenity building which is here, so there would be no additional amenity building. The area, Mr. Chairman, is on both sides, and you can see opposite, is basically described as a series of leisure plots. There are a lot of caravans, a lot of buildings and stables on either side of this particular site. And as I said, the marina is at the bottom of the track in any event, so it's not as if it's an open area. It's also a lawful gypsy and traveller site, having been granted planning permission through the appeal process. The application is to increase it from 1 to 2. There are no highway objections, no other objections. And therefore, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation is one of approval, which is considered that this particular proposal does meet the council's policies in respect of gypsy and traveller accommodation, as set out in both the development plan and indeed the emerging plan, as to be modified following the examination.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one speaker for this, and that's Nathaniel Green. Are you there, Mr. Green? Okay.
Hello. Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, as before, you'll be given 3 minutes and then you'll be told when to start. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start the timer when you're ready, and I'll let you know when you've got 30 seconds left.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Chair. I am Nathaniel Green from Green Planning Studio, and I'm speaking on behalf of our client, Mr. Goff, in support of this application. This committee is here to decide the matter on planning issues only, and this application is for an additional gypsy pitch alongside an existing established site and is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Your officer's report accepts that the LPA still needs to identify a 5-year land supply of specific deliverable sites, and that it is estimated by North Warwickshire Borough Council that there is a recognised need for an extra 19 permanent gypsy pitches in the period 2019 to 2033. Indeed, the level of need could be significantly higher, as has been pointed out that ORS, which undertook the research, has underestimated the true need. The unmet need for additional pitches within North Warwickshire is a significant material consideration that outweighs any effect on the rural character of the area. Under policy LP10 of the emerging local plan, this site is considered as an existing authorised gypsy and traveller site and is safeguarded as such. As the officer's report states, approving this application will help the council to meet its statutory duty in this regard and accords with policy H of the planning policy for travellers' sites. The extra mobile home is to accommodate the applicant's adult son and his girlfriend, as the family has grown since the original permission. Indeed, anything that can alleviate overcrowding is not only a good thing in itself, but under present circumstances could also mean that matter of life and death in the matter of when we have this issue of the pandemic. However, it also needs to be stated that the site is also an unrestricted gypsy site and therefore no named restriction can be put on it. The site, which lies on the outskirts of Manchester, has been judged sustainable by the inspector in the appeal that established this site. It is within reasonable distance of existing services. As far as visual impact is concerned, the inspector at the appeal found that the impact on the surrounding countryside was minimal. And as the officer's comment shows that providing there is soft landscaping mitigation and long-term management, then this application is acceptable. Our client is happy to comply with the proposed landscaping condition. The recommendation for approval comes with 6 conditions. Our client, Mr. Goff, is happy to comply with all of those conditions. On this basis, I urge you to approve this application, and in doing so, you will help to reduce North Warwickshire's shortfall of gypsy sites and help redress the unmet need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Okay, we also have a speaker. Is it Mr. Hopkins going to speak?
Yes.
Okay, on your own?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. If you'd like to take the speaker's chair. Again, Mr. Hopkins, you'll be given 3 minutes and you'll be told when to start.
I'll set the time off, the 3-minute time off when you start speaking, and I'll let you know when there's 30 seconds left.
Thank you very much. Fine. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. This planning consideration is for changes to an application going way back to appeal 13 years ago in 2008. The parish council understands that this application is simply asking for an additional caravan, and that is how it was worded originally, except that it seems to have been modified to mobile home. We have no consistent design for such structures or any combination of these structures. Can we clarify the definition of a caravan or mobile home, and also ask whether this is a retrospective application? There are a number of buildings already on site which, according to members of the public, appear to be occupied. These photographs were submitted to the planning authority in 2018 and clearly show a number of buildings that can be linked. There is only permission for 1 day room legitimately on this site, and this was conditional upon the dismantling of 2 existing storage buildings and the reduction in size of the structure, as agreed by the planning inspector who allowed the application through. Our concerns are mainly focused upon understanding and establishing an accurate site plan for future reference. We also wish to be reassured that previous planning conditions have been adhered to concerning landscaping and alterations to buildings. To this end, we would request that a site visit take place to confirm that the site is not overdeveloped within its rural setting, as per the adopted Manchester neighbourhood plan and referenced in the original inspector's report. The application gives no detail of the sewage and storage disposal, and yet the canal is nearby and could suffer if the system is totally inadequate. We do not actually understand why the spelling of names sometimes varies on applications. This appears to be a case as well. I note that the inspector originally says that additional landscaping and the layout of the site should be agreed and that commercial activities should be restricted. We have no proof of whether this is happening or not. And would we also point out to this meeting that all of our councillor representatives to the borough and even the county are actually in this meeting. And so we as a council are defenceless to ask them to speak on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you for Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Chair. Before Mr Hopkins brought it up, I was going to ask Mr Brown myself to clarify, is there a difference? Because the previous speaker mentioned mobile home and in the application it actually says caravan. So is there a difference, Mr Brown, or is they just now classed the same?
They are the same, Councillor Clues. The definition of caravan is set out in the Caravans and Control of Caravan Sites Development Act. They are the same. In fact, if you look at other gypsy and traveller sites, the majority of them are mobile homes. It includes a mobile home and a tourer.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. That was the very point I was going to make, as we've got some experience of this in Hartsey, is that when we say there's one caravan, it's usually a mobile home and a tourer. So it's actually two structures, if you like, albeit one is temporary, because it can be on the back of a car. But nevertheless, that's what normally happens. So it's a bit misleading to say one caravan, because it would actually be two if they're both classified as the same.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Chair. I understand where Mr Hopkins is coming from, that, I'm sitting here tonight subbing, and I do understand that this is down to recommendation, but I'd really like to address the concerns of Manchester Parish Council, and I'd like to recommend a site visit.
I'll second that, Chairman.
Councillor Simmons.
I was just going to second that.
Okay. So I have the proposer and a seconder.
Could I ask another question?
Yes, certainly, Councillor Dervick.
Before we take on that point.
Yeah.
And that is, it was mentioned by the first speaker that this is an unrestricted site. Does that mean we can't put a restriction on a second home there if we wished to do so? In the papers it says that this is to accommodate the applicant's son, who is now 18 and is too big for the home, as it were. And is it possible to say, to attach this so that it is to the family rather than just anybody? Because I could see the situation where son moves away, somebody else moves into the house, and then we get it escalating in the future.
The condition which is recommended, Mr Chairman, is that it's occupied by people that meet the gypsies and travellers definition. So it's a gypsy and, as I indicated right from the beginning, it's a gypsy and traveller lawful site. It's not personal to this particular family. It's very unusual to get a personal permission. It's normally they're normally conditioned as per the conditions set out here. In other words, they become a gypsy and traveller site, and therefore they're included in the monitoring in that respect. They're not personal conditions.
That's what I wondered, whether we could tie it up like that, but obviously not.
Thank you, Councillor Dervick. So we've had a proposer and a seconder for a site visit. Can we have a vote on the site visit? All those in favour? Okay, we'll go for a site visit. Thank you very much, and I'm in favour as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Next item is PAP 2020-0684, and that's Meadowview Farm, Kings Wolsey Lane, Meriden. Mr. Brown?
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick look through the plan. There's only a single plan here. Several members turned up for a visit on Saturday morning. These are very, very narrow lanes, as members will have seen on their site visit. And this is even narrower, just a single track coming up to some buildings up here. The application site is this larger area shaded yellow, with the track goes up to King Wolsey House, which is referred to in the report. This is the parking area, and the site here is the agricultural. It was pasture land at the present time, which we use for the proposed use as is indicated. The members that went on the site visit on Saturday will be aware from what was said, both by applicant and objector, that there was quite a difference of opinion about the actual scope of the application, let alone its impact. We were told that the scope of the application is not as described in the report, and that the particular use which is in the application is not actually taking place at the present time, and therefore the recommendation concerning enforcement is misplaced. Clearly, we had a different view when we spoke to the objector and went to the objector's house at King Wolsey House. Rather similarly, Mr. Chairman, to the case before we've had earlier on this evening, I think it's only fair to both parties, and particularly to the board, that we try to get to the bottom of what the actual proposal is. Members in the header on the application, you'll see it's change of use to sui generis dog walking care and training. We were told that dog care and dog training would not take place. So therefore, there's an issue with the description in the application straight away. And therefore, I think, to be fair to all parties and particularly to the board, this item ought to be deferred for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Can I propose that? We do that.
Okay, Councillor Davis has proposed it. No, seconder, Councillor MacDonald. So we did have Heather Baldham to speak. I don't really need to speak now because obviously it's been deferred. Sorry that. So yes. But can we have a vote on acceptance of this deferment? All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, so the
Okay.
speakers won't be speaking today.
Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on now to PAP 2021-0196. That's the Lines 87 Main Road, Osprey. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there are just a couple of plans. Excuse the format of this. This is taken from the emergency plan. The dots actually do indicate where the development boundary is for the village. But effectively, it's around the built-up area, as you can see. There is this indent here, as you can see, and the application site is the area outlined red, which is the back of the house, number 87. Number 87 is here. And a bit more detail. The application, as you can see, is the change of use of this paddock land to residential land, effectively extending the garden from here into the backland, tree planting, trees and shrubs, and then the gazebo and the summer house at the bottom end of the garden with the Townsend Close properties are here. You can just see those. And then in terms of what the buildings would look like, basically 3 metres tall, and very much like for like, as you can see there. I've got nothing further to add, Mr. Chairman. The report explains exactly where we're coming from, which leads to the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We have one speaker. Oh, sorry. Yeah, one speaker, and Gary and Catherine Bernival. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. As before, you'll be given 3 minutes and you'll be told when to start. Thank you.
As there are two of you, how are you going to organise?
One. Just me.
Oh, it's just yourself. Okay then. So as soon as you start speaking, I'll set the timer and I'll let you know when you've got 30 seconds left.
Okay, thank you. We're obviously supporting the application. We understand the rejection of our application is due to the intensification of the use and its scale and the subsequent impact on the character of the surrounding area and its openness, and that would harm the setting of the limes being our property, 87 Main Road. Through this planning process, we understand that the rights that we already have on the land is to plant trees and shrubs, etc., to make the area more private. And we also understand that should we choose to, and we do intend to exercise that right, having planted the trees and the shrubs, we can utilize the area as often as we wish. So by exercising those existing rights, we will make the land less open and hence more private, and its use will be intensified. So we don't understand the reason for the rejection. We'd also point out that the previous council permissions have already dramatically changed the setting of the limes, i.e. by agreeing to the erection of number 83 some years ago. And it also left the limes without any rear garden at all. The rear garden that we do have is very small. It was created by negotiation with the previous owners of 83, where we adapted the driveway to create a small area for where we can let our dogs out in the morning, for example. But the size of the existing garden is not in keeping with a property of the size and potential occupancy that we have. So we have two buildings. One is two double bedrooms, and the other one is a 3-story building, which has 5 double bedrooms. We'd also have to say that we found the whole planning process unsatisfactory. We put in some initial plans. We had some objections. We looked at those objections with the planning officer. We had a site visit with the planning officer. And through that whole process, the actual change of use was not raised as a significant issue. So the actual decision imposed suggests that somebody uninvolved in those discussions has just said this is the decision. So that's left us with no opportunity to consider alternatives. Should the planning board have any residual concerns, we are still seeking, wanting to seek a mutually acceptable solution, but we just want the opportunity to quietly enjoy our property as our neighbours do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for the speaker?
No.
None for the speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Humphries.
Mr. Furnable.
Mr. Furnable.
Mr. Furnable.
Furnable, sorry, my apologies. One more. Right. Okay then. Any comments? Councillor Humphries.
Chair, we've had several things like this in this village and in other villages that I'm associated with. This will change the character if we allow this to become part of the garden. It's included in the green area in the neighbourhood plan. And the people in St Nicholas Drive, which is where all the houses are behind, they're concerned about other things happening in that area. And one of the issues is once it becomes up part of the garden, the access road allows possibly a house to be built there. And that's why I don't think it should become part of the garden. I fully accept, having been to the site and spoke to both the neighbour as well as Mr. and Mrs. Mr. Furnable, why he wants to expand the garden and use it, but it actually will maybe not in the time that Mr. Furnival's there, but other people can change the character of that completely. And as soon as other people I know have had to be turned down and fields have not been allowed to become part of, or paddocks become part of the garden, I think I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Humphries. Anybody else? So at a proposal that we refuse the application, is there a seconder? Councillor Bell? All those in favour?
Refusal.
Refusal, yes. Anyone against? No. Okay. That's refused. Item. It's PAP 2020-0599, and that's 92. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just run through the slides first? In the first place, this is the Coastal Road at the top, the junction with School Hill, just around about here. Existing shops here, and also along this particular part of the frontage. This is the new retail building, which the planning permission was granted and is now constructed. Chancery Lane is down here. Willow Close, which is referred to in the committee report, the 3 bungalows here, with the back gardens of Chancery Lane extending at the bottom end of the site. In terms of the geography, that's better explained through this particular plan here. The application site being the red area, and other land within the applicant's control being blue. Chancery Lane down here, the flats that we have here, Willow Close, and the existing shops here and throughout here. The proposal, as you can see, is to create the whole of this area as a new car park for staff and customers in relating to the new building, and also staff and customers for existing tenants in the buildings that are here and also down here. The access would be off the Coastal Road, as you can see here. This is an approved access granted when planning permission was granted for the retail building here. The intention is to have deliveries to the back of the building, and as you can see from the application here, it's divided into two. I can just describe the various other pieces on the site. There's a recycling area which would be down here. This red line, in fact, is the underground drainage tank, if I can put it that way, that would take the surface water drainage from the car park. The existing gates here lead up to a secondary access onto Coastal Road, which is already used, but it would obviously be used less if the main access was into the car park down here. The boundary treatments are important, as members will see from the committee report, and particularly on all 3 sides that are here. The diagram that you have here is the area down by Willow Close. So this is the retaining wall as looked at by Willow Close, and this again is a cross section of that particular wall. And the wall continues around the bottom here and also up here. Just move on. Oh, that's right. In terms of the other plans and diagrams that are in the report, Mr. Chairman, there's some photographs in the report which show what the situation was prior to the work commencing, and also the situation with respect of the levels before work commenced. And those, Mr. Chairman, are on page 6J157, which is on Appendix E, and also Appendix D on the page before, 156 and 157, particularly 156, which shows you an aerial photograph showing the car park that was there prior to work commencing, and also the photograph below shows the levels that were there, and that's as explained in the committee report. This was already a raised area prior to work commencing. There have been site visits to the site, and members have visited the sites. and they've seen some of the issues that are raised in the report as a consequence of those visits. Can I just make 2 or 3 introductory comments, please, Mr. Chairman, before going into the committee report in a little bit more detail? First of all, this is retrospective. Members will have seen that on their site visit. However, that is not a reason for refusal, nor should it colour the consideration that you give to this particular case. You have to deal with it in the round as a planning proposal for a car park. The report certainly indicates that there are impacts. There's no getting away from that. There are impacts as a result of this particular development. The question I would ask of members is that you need to first ask, can those impacts be mitigated through planning conditions? And as I run through the report, and in fact, what I'm going to say, that in my view is the way forward. And thirdly, the board should only consider planning considerations. You're aware of this, but you'll also see from the committee report, and particularly from some of the objections that have been received, representations that have been received, that there are non-planning matters which are mentioned, and I'll come back to those as I go through. And in terms of background, Mr. Chairman, the retail permission is now almost complete, involving that approved access, and members will have seen that on the site. As I've just referred to, the site was used for car parking in connection with the frontage properties and some HGV parking, plus outside storage, as you can see from the aerial photograph. And members should be aware of the history involved on that particular site. As I said, work is already, the site here was already raised ground during that extends way back to the 1980s and 1990s. So the site was already on a kind of plateau. The site was already, that stage was tree lined, which you can see from the aerial photograph. In terms of principle, Mr. Chairman, I do not see an objection to this. It's a benefit overall, highway reasons, and for the general community, supporting the economic and social benefits that arise from effectively the redevelopment of this particular commercial area in Hartsel and Chapel End. And particularly, it will take a lot of pressure off parking on Cosel Road, not necessarily from staff and customers, but also from deliveries. The report, Mr. Chairman, goes into some detail on the impacts, and I do need to go through these because clearly that is the major thrust of the representations that have been received. There's quite a lengthy appendix which runs through all of these, but I do need to go through them one by one to pick out those which are planning matters and those which are not planning matters. I don't disagree, Mr. Chairman, that from a visual impact point of view, there's going to be a substantial change. That's perfectly clear, and I think members will appreciate that on those who visited the site. There's clearly some interim mitigation on the site, and members will have seen that in the artificial leaves and planting that has been put up on some of the walls. However, it's quite clear that other conditions can be imposed on the grant of any plan permission. In other words, full landscaping on the outside of the walls, and also perhaps we can look at staining the fence, particularly on its inside, to take a bit of the starkness of that area off. But certainly, landscaping on the outside of the walls would be a benefit, and that would also be a climbing landscape treatment through shrubs, which would quickly help mitigate the impact of that particular wall. That, Mr. Chairman, is a planning consideration. The loss of light, particularly to Willow Close and in some degree to properties in Chancery Close, is again a material consideration. However, I do point out that behind Willow Close there was a substantial tree line, trees and hedgerows along there anyway, that's still on higher ground. Therefore, whilst visually it may look different, there certainly was a degree of overshadowing on those back gardens in Willow Close as a result of the trees and hedgerows which were there. As far as noise is concerned, then the applicants provided a series of assessments, and you'll see from the report, Mr. Chairman, that our environmental health officer does not object, subject to conditions. And those conditions are quite important. Certainly the hours of use of the car park, such they match the shop. No HGV parking overnight. and that we look at filling the gaps between the bottom of the fence and the car park, which the applicant says he would do. And also we need to specify the actual type of acoustic fence. So the acoustic fence that has gone in is correct in that it meets the specification of the noise assessment, but we would just need to check that. But that's not an issue. In terms of lights, and you can see there are lighting columns on the plan there. Again, a lighting assessment has been undertaken, and as members will be aware from previous applications, conditions can be applied to looking at the column heights, cowling, and also ensure that there are horizontal luminaries rather than facing upwards, and also the maximum amount of luminance on the site. Members should be aware, and also I couple this with the comments that I make on noise, is that this is not a rural area. It's a mixed urban area. There are lots of lights, and there is noise during the day and evening as well. So this you have to see it in that context. In terms of highways, then there's an approved access, and as I said, the secondary access will be closed and will certainly be used less. So there's an overall improvement. You'll see from the report, Mr. Chairman, that we're waiting for the County Council to comment on a road safety audit. That road safety audit looks at the safety, particularly of pedestrians and cyclists using the crossover on Coleshill Road up here, particularly along there. I'm not expecting there to be major issues as a result of that. They would normally be covered by condition if there were issues, or other issues can be taken into account when an application goes to the Highway Authority for construction of the access under the Highways Act. So it's a technical matter rather than the planning matter. A lot of the report, Mr. Chairman, deals, specifically on the representations, deals with surface water. Clearly, it's a large car park and surface water has become an issue. In order to back up some of the comments in the report, Mr. Chairman, then we've undertaken a calculation to indicate what the underground storage tank should be, the volume of the underground storage tank should be, given this car park area, and we think it should be around about up to 30 cubic metres. In fact, 140 have been provided in the tank, and it's been well and truly over provided. And that particular size has been confirmed by the installer. There are comments in the representations that that has not been the case, but we've had a letter from the contractor who actually put the installation in to confirm that it is 140 cubic metres. The discharge of that goes into a sewer, a combined sewer, and that is limited to 15 litres a second, which in fact is exactly the same as the system that was approved for the retail building. Again, Severn Trent Water have confirmed that that is adequate. There are several other queries around drainage which the objectors have raised. You'll see from the report there's an independent report on alleged damage to a sewer. But also, if you read that report, it indicates there was some damage pre-work commencing on the site. So therefore, whether or not the damage that's been alleged to have been caused was caused by this development or it was existing is not assured. And also, there has been repair work on that sewer in any event. This is not a planning matter, Mr. Chairman. If, in fact, the particular representative or the objector is concerned that there has been damage to the sewer, then that's for him to take up, particularly for Severn Trent to take up. It's not a matter that we can take up as a planning situation on a planning matter. In terms of foul water, then clearly this is a car park, and therefore foul water should not come into your consideration of this application at all. One of the objectors particularly concerns about foul water discharge into their gardens as a result of work being undertaken. Again, that's a private matter. Foul water is not an issue for this application, and that particular representative should take that matter up with the applicant or indeed with Severn Trent if it's a public sewer. There's also been reference in the objectives report representations, Mr. Chairman, about flooding at the beginning of July. This is when we had those torrential downpours at that particular time, and the manholes burst in Coleshill Road, which is along here. A manhole burst there, and a manhole burst down here. As a result of the contours of the land, the floodwater, and it was floodwater, came down Chancery Lane, flooded number 7 and went into number 9. Water also came down through the secondary access onto the car park here. As far as we can make out, there was no flooding from the car park into these gardens. The flooding in the gardens came as a direct result of water coming down Chancery Lane and not from the car park, as has been alleged by one of the objectors. That again, Mr. Chairman, is a matter which is outside your remit. The applicant's duty here is only to make sure that surface water from his particular proposal is self-contained, and he drains it into a public sewer or other discharge point with the agreement of the Severn Trent Water Authority. That has happened. He is not liable and has not got to take account of a flood situation that occurred in that particular instance. That's a matter for Severn Trent to sort out with the capacity of the sewers in Coleshill Road. However, it would be very useful, Mr. Chairman, if we're talking about conditions, that we do look at perhaps an annual maintenance condition requiring the surface water system to be ensured that it is looked after properly and maintained properly on an annual basis, such that if in fact there is ponding in this part of the car park, it does not overflow into back gardens which are here. That the drainage here is oversized and it should go into that and into the underwater storage tank as indicated here, and then into the public sewer which runs down here. I apologise, Mr. Chairman, for the length of that, but I think members, if they've read the report, will realise there are a whole host of issues here, completely different viewpoints from the applicant and from the objector. And the objector's representation is coming in full, as I'm required to report to you, and it does require addressing. So overall, Mr. Chairman, I'm recommending that in principle we are minded to support this. Since the report was written, there's been quite a considerable amount of engagement with the applicant, as I've indicated as I've gone through the impacts, and that has been very, very worthwhile, and it reinforces my recommendation to support. The recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is that we continue that discussion. And the most important thing that's outstanding now is the road safety audit to see what comes back from the County Council. And what I'm suggesting, Mr. Chairman, in the recommendation is that we are minded to support this particular proposal, and that's subject to there being no objection from the Highway Authority as a matter that can't be dealt with by condition or through the technical approval under the Highways Act. Therefore, that a full schedule of conditions be delegated to the chairman, vice chairman, the opposition planning spokesperson and the local members. In other words, it would not come back to the planning committee for a final decision. Again, I apologise, Mr. Chairman, but I've had to go through all of that because it's been quite an involved case, and I have to sort out and the board does have to sort out what are planning considerations and what are non-planning considerations.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for that very in-depth information, and I think we all needed it. We'll have two speakers. First, Roger, is it Roger Lee? Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Obviously, as before, you can have 3 minutes and you'll be told when to start. Thank you.
Okay. As soon as you start speaking, I'll start the timer. You'll have 3 minutes and I'll let you know when there's 30 seconds left.
Okay, thank you. I haven't got an awful lot to say, to be honest, because I think Mr. Brown summarised everything in great detail and very accurately. Just a few points, though, in terms of two of the main issues do relate to drainage and noise. And the application is supported by expert consultant reports on those matters, and they have favourable conclusions. favourable conclusions that are supported by the relevant consultees and, as of course, the planning officer in the report in front of you. The development does bring, as has been said, a significant benefit in alleviating car parking on the roadside on Coleshill Road. And as Mr. Brown says, the site has long-standing use as a car park. This application provides for a more organised layout and also robust boundary treatments to protect the amenity of neighbouring properties. So we do fully endorse the contents and conclusions of the report that has been put in front of you by the planning officer, and that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. I also have Rachel Hartop.
Yes, that's me.
Yes, again, when she starts speaking, I'll set the timer and I'll let you know when there's 30 seconds left.
I would like to propose the planning application due to the lack of consideration to the surrounding properties and residents' homes that have been left impacted by this overbearing building work. I believe that the people responsible for this project have taken advantage of COVID-19 and the lack of visible planning officers available. I was advised from the planning office that they've been advised to stop the work but haven't. This is classed as retrospective planning. The elderly neighbours in both Chancery Lane and Willow Close feel that they've been treated with contempt and the lack of consultation is not acceptable. The first planning application letter received was on the 8th of March of this year. 11 Chancery Lane was advised that they would remove the trees and replace it with a fence. This was agreed as Mrs. Hartop was advised it would be a staff car park, not to the scale it now is. She was never advised that the level of the ground would be filled and raised to the degree that it has been, and this has consequently made the fence that's been erected around her home 18 feet high or so, and it is completely overbearing and left her home like a fortress. As you will see from the photos submitted, that there are rusty, uneven steel girders the whole length of 11 Chancery Lane. This needs to be addressed as looks terrible and demonstrates the poor workmanship on this project. The car park, by virtue of its scale, height and massing forms, a dominant incongruous feature, and it fails to positively integrate or respect its immediate existing surroundings. As per a similar planning application which was refused in May 19 by this council, 0063. And I would like to know what the difference is between these two planning applications is, as it should be refused outright in its current state. I was grateful of the recent visits to the affected properties, and you've seen for yourself that it is not in line with the neighbourhood and is too large and is therefore not fit for purpose. The project has ramped ahead and the poor workmanship has continued to the detriment of the neighbours' homes that they have owned for more than 40 years. The lights are too high and are intrusive and will leave homes like an airport runway. There are too many and these need to be reduced by number and also to ground level. Please note that these are planned to be on till 10 o'clock at night, beaming into the surrounding bedrooms, again, completely unacceptable and no consideration has been applied here. There also appears to be intrusive CCTV installed. When I discussed the planning application, the response I received was it's only been submitted to pacify the planning officer. Some cheap plastic cover has been put on the fence to remove the harshness, but the height is overbearing and it looks vile. There is a concern over the drainage on the 4th of July as the manhole lifted and raw sewage was in the garden of 9 Chancery Lane. This has never happened in 40 years, so it needs to be investigated further. I believe if the planning is not refused as it should be in its current state, I would ask there is a compromise of scaling back the car park and ensuring that the properties are not left overwhelmed, and to reduce the impact by having a large gap between people's family homes and the humongous car park, and the lighting be reduced to ground level.
Afraid you'll have to stop there, I'm afraid. The time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Bell. Would like...
Thank you. I've got some questions. Ms. Hartop. So you talk about the land being raised. How much higher do you think it was than it was before? How much higher is it now than it was before?
I would say around 2 to 3 feet.
And how is that justified? How do you know that?
Obviously, I've looked at what it was before, and obviously now that it's been lifted and all the trees have come out, we can see that fence was never there before. Once the trees were removed and that's been lifted, obviously what the gentleman that was running the project said that they would put a fence in my mother-in-law's garden, which they've done, but they didn't discuss the huge fence that's been put adjacent to all the steel rusty girders.
I can carry on. So you accept that, excuse me, most of this land has always been a car park, but it was very rough, and now it's very much improved. Wouldn't you agree?
On that side of the property, it looks lovely. The surrounding properties, it's a disgrace.
Sorry?
The surrounding properties, it looks a disgrace. I think from where the shop is, it looks great. But when you actually go to Willow Close and Chancery Lane, it looks horrendous. It's an eyesore.
Okay, thank you. And you said about poor workmanship. How do you justify that?
Well, if you look on the FIPO photos that I've sent in, you will see all the rusty, uneven steel girders that have been left throughout the whole garden. Obviously, as well, there's been an issue with the drainage, and I know Mr. Brown mentioned about that. But I mean, in 40 years, 9 Chancery Lane has never had raw sewage in their garden. So again, there is questions about that. And what I wanted to say, but I did run out of time, was that I feel that should be investigated further before this is proved.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Councillor Lees.
You've mentioned raw storage. Mr. Brown did say that the manholes on Coleshill Road had overflowed. Would that be because of those, not from the car park?
Well, it's never happened in 40 years, so it seems strange that it suddenly happened when there's been work done underneath. Obviously, there's been a lot of drilling and a lot of work going on. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm an expert in building work. I'm not, but obviously there's been work done, and it does seem strange that this has happened when they've resided there, most of their life, and it's never happened. And I would ask that that's investigated, please.
What I'm trying to get to is that Mr. Brown said that 2 manholes on Coleshill Road overflowed and there was nothing wrong with the car park. So would it be the manholes on Coleshill Road that caused the problem rather than the car park? I doubt it very much that it was the car park.
I can only tell you of what I know. I'm not going to tell you something I don't know, so I apologise, I can't answer that. But what I will say is that they've never had raw sewage in their garden and this happened.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Has anyone else got any questions for the speakers? Okay, thank you very much, both of you. Thank you for joining this meeting. Any comments from anybody? Councillor Lees.
I know Willow Close quite well. I have quite a lot of dealings with Willow Close. I've spoken to the 3 residents down Willow Close, and they were quite happy with the wall that went up and consequently with the greenery that has covered the wall. Yes, they were told that it was going to be a fence, but when they was told the reason for the wall because of it could cause a landslip, these people was quite happy with that. They've had fences repaired, and everything they've asked for has been done by the people who are having the car park done. I just think that part of Coleshill Road is one of the worst areas that I know to. So to get especially heavy goods vehicles delivering to those shops off the road and out of the way is going to alleviate a lot of the problems. So in my mind's eye, I would like to recommend what Mr. Brown says, to pass this car park. We've gone on about it for way too long. It's there, it's a good car park, and it's going to solve a lot of problems, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. Anybody else got any comments?
I'd like to second.
So, Gary, Councillor Hancock.
I'd like to second.
Okay. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Glad to speak, please. Yes. So I absolutely agree with those councillors there and support Mr. Brown's proposal, particularly as I did ask him, does that mean does it come back to planning? Just made it clear that only if we can't cover any highways objections by conditions would it come back. So I'm content with that because, like Councillor Lees, I'd like to say this has been going on a long time and it's a massive benefit to the community. And this is not a change of use. This has always been car parking, but on very rough ground. And it looks beautiful. Those people who've been on the planning visit will see it's all paved. It looks really good. And there's been adequate drainage put in, more than adequate, as Mr. Brown's told us. I think the benefit to the community can't be exaggerated. Coles Hill Road is a nightmare. And at the moment, we've got HGV stopping outside right next to a crossing and a junction, trying to offload into this shop. This car park will provide parking for the HGVs to unload on site. It's also going to provide car parking for not just the new shop staff, but the staff for all the row of shops can park in the car park at the back, getting them off the road. And of course, because the new shop's got its entrance at the side, not on the road, hopefully people will park in the car park to go to the shop and not park on the road. I can't emphasise enough how much of benefit this is to the community. And also the topology of the land around there is very strange and very difficult. The whole of these shops are on a plateau and it drops away to the two side roads, and it's always been like that. There's been a slight increase in level because obviously we put paving on, etc. But where Willow Close is, as Councillor Lees has just said, it was a bank that went right up with trees on. That was very dangerous. It could have slipped at any time. And this applicant has actually paid an awful lot of money to get a very strong retaining wall in there, which is sort of L-shaped like that, so it won't fall over. So it's made it very safe, and it's also made it safe on the other side by different means. So this is, there's been a lot of allegations which Mr. Brown has gone through in detail, most of which can be explained. And the rest can be dealt with by conditions. So I'm quite happy to support Mr. Brown's recommendation that we're minded to approve this and that conditions are sorted out by the spokesperson and the chairman and the local members, with Mr. Brown leading on that.
Thank you very much.
Could I ask the question, Mr. Clues?
I'm afraid you can't speak unless you
Okay.
ask.
Thank you.
I do apologise. Councillor Derricks.
Thank you. Councillor Bell, you've given us an awful lot of very good reasons for granting this permission. And I have to agree with you on many of them. But that still doesn't stop me going away with a bad taste in my mouth, because I think that this developer has disregarded the planning process. I know that isn't a reason for refusal. He's gone ahead with this. There were other possibilities for using this site for parking, which wouldn't have had such a high impact on surrounding properties, that could have worked, but he chose to go down this route before consultation with the planning department or anybody else. And that disappoints me, I'm afraid. I think you're right that this has a very high positive impact in the area and is something that is needed, but I think we could have done better. And that is a disappointment. As far as the recommendation is concerned, I think that is the best that we can do. And I would like to see, if we are going to support this, that we really do tie this up with proper conditions. And I would like to see those actually limiting the access of the car park to the times that is being suggested. And that, like other car parks in the area, there is a barrier so that it cannot be used for antisocial behaviour at night, for instance. I think that that would be quite essential. We've been told that there is a staff car park, and when I was on the site visit, it was pointed out to be a very large area of that parking, and it is the area nearest to the houses. In order to minimise the impact of the cars coming and going, I think that should also be put on with some sort of barrier so that it can be restricted to the staff and not just coming and going all the time. As far as the edges of the car park are concerned, I had a look at it again today, and there is only a relatively thin wooden fence between the edge of the car park and the drop into the surrounding properties on two sides, as far as I can see. And I think that the suggestion that has been made about an armco barrier there should be considered very carefully as a condition. I also think that the suggestion that some of the workmanship has not been finished off properly at this stage, so not necessarily that it is poor workmanship, that it hasn't been finished off properly. When you look at the sheet piling, it is not, in my view, finished off properly. It is all over the place at the top. It should be level and it should be painted like it has been done on the Willow Close end. Yeah, that end has been painted green to improve the visual impact of it. The rest of it has just been left, and I think that that should also be finished off properly. So I think that there is a lot there. I also think that the recycling area has been added to this. It's as far away from the shop as possible, but we're told that it is for the shop. I think we should have some indication as to what is going to be recycled there, how long it's going to be. Is it going to be for just the shop? Is it going to be for the general public to leave stuff as well? And I think we need to look at conditions over the management of that as well. And finally, we're told that deliveries are going to be at the back of the shop. I would like to see, as we have conditioned elsewhere in the borough, that the timing of deliveries is conditioned as well. So deliveries cannot take place all night. I think they should be restricted to the normal hours of the shop, the normal hours of the car park, and not continue after those hours. I would like to see a condition that puts that into effect. I think that it would be right for the planning officers and the representatives, as put forward in this recommendation that has been suggested. I think that would be the best way to go forward with those, but those are the things that I would like to see added in the conditions.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to address something that Mr Brown said when he apologised for the length of the report. I'd like to thank Mr Brown for the length of the report, because I think it was an excellent report that he gave us, and I know it already answered some of the questions that I would have probably been doing. So, as I say, I'd like to thank Mr Brown for the length of the report he gave us and for everything that's in this pack. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Clues. Right. So, Mr Brown, do we have?
You've got a proposal and a seconder.
Right. Okay.
Can Mr Brown comment on any of the
Okay.
what we just covered?
The conditions
or not?
I've made notes. they're on my list.
Right.
The only one issue which I will follow up, but that may be difficult is the deliveries, hours of delivery, because that may be related to the shop application rather than to the car park. But I will just discuss that with the applicant and see where we get to.
Okay, so we've had a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour of accepting the conditions? Everything going on?
Hold on, we're not accepting the conditions.
Sorry, accepting the proposal. The proposal. Right, all those in favour of accepting the proposal? Okay, thank you, that's carried. Thank you very much. So we're moving on to item 7 of the agenda, the corporate plan and performance targets. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The corporate plan and performance targets went to your last committee, and the board resolved that I was asked to prepare a report to show how we were going to move the red items that were shown red under the traffic light system into amber or green, and I've done that. So therefore, I'm quite happy to answer any questions maybe as a result of that.
Anybody got any questions from Mr. Brown?
Councillor
Hayfield.
It's unfortunate that it's Councillor Simpson that asked for the conditions to be, and he's not here to. It's nice to see Mr. Brown. I spend all evening hearing him from the back of his monitor screen. Maybe we do something about that. It's better if we actually see the whites of his eyes rather than the back of his screen monitor. But yeah, I'll move the recommendation.
Shall we sort of defer this for the right?
No, let's get rid of it now.
Feel happy that he's not been here for the week.
I'll move it over to
Second to Councillor Clunes. All those in favour? Okay, thank you very much. Declare the meeting closed at 8:22. Councillor Derrick, sorry.
This follows on you closing the meeting and us going off one,
Yeah.
please. I'd like
Okay,
to
yeah.
comment.
Yes, carry on.
Okay.
Closing, yeah.